Hello, folks, and welcome back to the wonderful world of Antarctica in the summer of 1933. That is to say, about 5 p.m. in the afternoon of December 2nd. Um, we find our group um, huddled in the mess tent of Lake's camp, um, eagerly discussing amongst themselves in the larger group the revelations that they may or may not have gained by reading the text of Professor Dyer, what we also know as the literary work Beyond the Mountains of Madness, and to find out who the camera is focusing in on, let's go around and find out who we have in our group. So, starting off with Valentina.
Yep, Valentina's trying to figure out whether it's just some fantasy somebody wrote down in a book or this couldn't possibly be true. So this intrepid reporter is ready to get down to the bottom of this mystery.
And there are certainly plenty of mysteries out there. Um, Speaking of mysteries, at least so far, we'll swing round to Mr. Murphy.
Yes. Roger seems to be taking a little break self-medicating, so we have Stanley Murphy who's going to step in. He likes to go by Stan, of course, so please just call me Stan. And he's as hard-boiled as they come, ready to take on the world.
And of course, speaking of hard boiled, who better to contrast that with than the frozen tundra mass that comes in through the door of Big Sue's?
Hi, y'all. Stan, Valentina, Walrick, I believe. You've been reading this gyre stuff? It's just wild.
And continuing round, passing the recumbent form of Dr. Wigglesworth, who is cowering a little bit in the corner, just shaking his head. Um, we have um, Leonard Warwick.
So this is the point where Stoddard is going to take some time to think about what he's been seeing and what they've discovered with the notes. He got a glimpse of what might be coming for him. As the one who's been doing the autopsies, seeing the remains of the human vivisection, and then being in a position to review Dyer's notes, even briefly, was definitely something this codger who's used to dealing with things that are long dead, generations dead, wasn't quite ready to deal with. So he's having a bit of a crisis as he processes it, also while still being faced with the continual uncovery of more bodies that he's expected to process and examine himself. Hopefully, what is dead will remain lying as such. Um, so, um, Mike, someone who's been more in the background, keeping things going, trying to keep the airplanes in one piece after everything that was happening on the ships, but who's been a little less in the know about some of the weird things because again he's been very busy with mechanical repair, and in the radio tent is Leonard Warwick. Um, he's he's retired military. He was part of the he was a military engineer corps and has been is on. Yeah, words are a thing. He was part of the corps and is now a civilian consultant and is attached to this expedition in that role. Um, so he's a little hardier than Warwick. Um, also, so not one that particularly has any reason to believe in the strange, and is just kind of a little bemused by some of the stuff that's being bandied around at the table in front of him with such almost casual uh, presentation. Sounds like something out of a campfire story.
Oh, and since it's getting on for midsummer, a campfire would be a glorious idea indeed down here. Um, so, speaking of the dire text, those are the characters that feel that they would have perused it over the last 12 hours or so since it came back into your possession. And by the way, um, those of you that were part of the rescue of Herr Rorsch from his abductors all those weeks ago back in New York, you recognize the um, the bound manuscript as the package that he was carrying at the time, that was spirited away by the one miscreant who managed to make a getaway in the speedboat. But I guess the question, yes. So anybody who cares to have perused the dire text can gain 1 point of Cthulhu Mythos and can take a hit of 1d3 sanity points. No sanity roll needed.
I'm going to apply that to Stoddard. Leonard, as I said, I'm going with he's a lot newer to the PC spotlight, as it
Yep,
were.
absolutely. And I would also say that this is part of the same day that you witnessed the contents of the aircraft hangar. So, as far as indefinite insanity goes, those two sanity loss events add up. Now, I'm going to assume that Big Sue's isn't really the literary kind of gal.
Honestly, the opposite. She had nothing
Ooh,
else to do, so she does a lot of reading, actually.
ooh,
I
okay.
I also don't know about the rest of you, but I lost my first point of sand off that book.
It doesn't quite qualify as exposure to the mythos in as much as whilst it talks about it, it doesn't put it right actually in front of you. So you still have that particular 5% Cthulhu mythos to come. That you only get the 1% here, along with everybody else. Well, everybody else who admits to scanning it, perusing it.
I think Stoddard's okay and doesn't hit a break point because he had actually done pretty well on his rolls. And I just only did the 1 point, but like I said, he's off um, having some fun times in his thoughts while also being expected to examine dead bodies. Warwick is like, what? What are you all talking about?
So are we supposed to believe that there's some sort of creatures running around underneath this continent? Is that what we're supposed to believe? Like some sort of starfish people?
Who
I
are you
mean,
asking?
that's what they
The
want
ones that
us to
have read it
believe.
or the
But
ones that
I mean,
haven't?
The ones that were here when we after because we were all sitting around reading it, I believe. So
Yeah, it's basically the whole group. Those who have read, those who haven't listened to whoever's doing the reading.
it sounds awfully
I
fantastical. Is all I'm
mean, let's
saying.
be honest. Absolutely, Valentina. I just have to assume that you get a whole breath full of that airplane exhaust, get up there way high up in the cold temperatures, just have a little bit of snow madness. I'm sure it was nothing more than that.
I mean, I look strange creatures found in the ice. I, that's not my thing. That's the professor who's dealing with the bodies. But what we uncovered didn't look like starfish. They had star bits that look. They had bits of them that looked starish, but they, as far as I understood, starfish pretty flat, 5 points, sometimes more. Uh, those don't, I can't imagine a creature you could have. They'd be very sustainable out of water, walking around on ground in huge sizes. Those bodies don't seem right. Like, don't they even just kind of float sideways anyway? What? I leave that to other people.
And Roger's not there. He noped out.
So it's about now that Professor Moore joins you in the mess area, and he says, "Well, um, you've all had some time to peruse uh, Dyer's document. I mean, it certainly puts things in a different perspective than what history tells. But then, who told the history? It was Dyer and his companions. I I can't help but feel, especially given Miss Acacia's um, rather precipitous announcement over the radio last night, that um, the only way of proving or disproving that, well, tale, fantasy event um, is probably to fly up over the pass and see what's up there. If there is an ancient city of some kind up there, then that would tend to lend credence at least to the base of the text. Whether the details are um, accurate or not, of course, is a different thing. Um, I'll put it to the others, of course, but it would please me greatly if at least some of you were able to be in that first flight over the mountains. There'll be time for the others later, once we know what's what. Um, but that's not to say that there aren't a whole lot of questions that we need to ponder, even if we do or don't decide to go. Well, I'm going to go. Miss Lexington. I know that Starkweather is not going to let Miss Lexington get the jump on us. Once he realizes what's going on.
I know I'm definitely going to go because that's where the story is.
I honestly, their squabble is not particularly of interest to me either way, but I assume you want me along to make sure the plane stays operable after all the gremlins that have been plaguing us so far. She should be
The,
good to fly,
the,
but
the thought of taking the two planes up into that kind of rarefied atmosphere and having to land them out who knows where without a competent mechanic doesn't fill me with joy necessarily. So it would be much appreciated, Mr. Warwick.
Of course I'm gonna go. We need to put this to rest.
And Stan is just ready for some action now. Finally, an expedition. All right, let's get going. I'm getting bored around here.
I'm sure there will be any number of recalcitrant creatures indoors for you to deal with, Stan. But to that point, though, um, I know that theoretically the two of us are equal partners on this expedition, but just between these four walls and ourselves, and he looks down at the book that lies open on the table. I'm a little bit concerned about how much we really should tell Dr. Starkweather. I'm sure he'll want to come along just for the sheer excitement of being first, regardless of what the truth or mistruth of the prior history is. But I would be happy to have your insight in the matter. Maybe I'm too close to him to really know.
I have to say, at the end of the day, this could be really dangerous. So I think it's important for us to have a point team and not send everybody we have at the same time.
Agreed. Uh, I'm just concerned as to whether Starkweather has the mental fortitude to handle what the text describes, if he's better off facing those sorts of dangers, as it were, unprepared. I know that some of our colleagues have already suffered somewhat due to the unexpected reality that Dyer and the rest chose not to bring back with them when they came back in 31.
I think these people were just weak. I mean, what are they all worried about? Bit of cold? Snow? It's nothing we can't handle. Is my ignorance showing?
Don't forget the squid people. So
Huh? Squid? What are you talking about, squid people? Don't be ridiculous.
Stan, are you like Tremblay? Are you also from Canada?
Nope, I'm from Boston.
Sounds good.
And no, I cannot do a Boston accent.
No, I want to hear it.
Not happening.
Do it.
And to that, sort of extending that thought, it's clear that Miss Lexington is going to head to the plateau under her own auspices and power, and probably take some of the Basmeier Falcon expedition with her. They seem to be in cahoots in that regard. Um, which makes me a little concerned both for her but also for us in the that he says, indicating yet again the text on the table, came from Professor Meyer. And if they have that knowledge, whether it's correct or the fabrications of a deluded mind, um, what else do they know that we don't? I just want us to be, well, I guess wary. I know we're all decent folk who would tend to trust people rather than not, but I'm uneasy. Maybe my unease is that the the rescue party that came here to Lake's camp clearly covered up the truth. Why did they do that? What's the harm in telling the world what actually happened? Is there what should what do you feel we should do? Should we, when it comes time for my radio broadcast, should we just broadcast to the world what really happened here? Or should we play the cards perhaps closer to the chest? It seems like Acacia Lexington is happy to sweep what happened here under the carpet, horrible though it is. And I have no, well, the Germans aren't talking apart from maybe to their own group out on the Weddell Sea. But I honestly don't know which is the better the better choice.
I can't uh, tell you what to do, Doctor. I don't know what the better thing is to do. In my line of work, I found that the truth is usually the better option, but in something like this, I don't know. And does it do anything to the memories of those that fell the last time?
None of this seems particularly sensible one way or another. Like these papers make no sense. What apparently, according to your professors, what's being found makes no sense. Starkweather's directions make no sense. I think we want the best thing to do is focus on keeping people alive and making sure things don't break. Like, we prep for the weather, we make sure nothing catches us unawares, whether that's someone going snow mad or something we didn't know that's apparently been thriving on the ice. I don't know, maybe there's some sort of like weird polar bear or penguin. I don't know. I'm not an animal person. Well, I mean, dogs are great, but I'm not a scientist. So we keep an eye out for dangerous wildlife like you would in any place. You keep an eye out for hostiles, and you keep everyone alive. I don't know what else.
I mean, all I can think of is, I mean, we can't turn down, a little bit of excitement here. We got to get out there, and I mean, this Miss Valentina, she's definitely gonna want some story, right? This is a great story for you. We got to get her out there. I don't want to sit around anymore. Idling is the devil's work, I tell you.
Stan, you're a Bostonian after my own heart.
Oh, you know it. Why are we sitting around? Right? You want to get out there, get some dogs going.
Absolutely. Yeah.
See, that's how it is.
You ready for this, Valentina? Let's get going.
Absolutely.
So we move things along to that same evening when Professor Moore radios Dr. Starkweather and basically tells him that they've or that you have uncovered information that makes a voyage over the mountains an immediate necessity. And the Barsmeier Falcon expedition, along with Miss Lexington, are preparing for a similar foray. Now, fortunately, Starkweather has managed to reach back to the main um, ice shelf. Uh, Unfortunately, all of your pilots have been busy working with the Germans in the caves all day, so that they're rather tired. So they'll have to. Halperin will take the Enderby and fly out first thing tomorrow morning and go and pick up Starkweather and hopefully take it from there. And so the night progresses peacefully. The Germans of the Barsmeier Falcon expedition, since they're on the opposite clock to you, um, excavate yet more the final two of the Thing burial mounds, both of which were originally topped with those soapstone like 5-armed stone pieces. And it is quite a balmy day when December 3rd rolls around. The wind is only about 20 miles an hour. The outside temperature is a mere -5 Fahrenheit. And there's just a hint of cirrus cloud in the sky. Overnight or early in the morning, so about 3 a.m. or so, the two remaining German trimotors take off and head off towards the Weddell Sea to regroup with the main body of the Barsmeier Falcon expedition. But about an hour after they leave, the wind picks up and starts to reach up to probably about gale force strength, so 40 some miles an hour. It's getting quite windy. So the wind is tearing the awnings and the tents. Anything loose starts to fly off down the ice. So several pieces of small equipment from the supply piles are just scattered. I would ask you all to make polar survival rolls.
Oh boy.
Well, this will be interesting.
Did I learn some on the boat?
I'm sorry, my sound cut up. What are we rolling?
Polar survival.
Did Stanley?
Or
Did you level up
Antarctic
any of
survival
your?
or Antarctic survival, depending on what you.
Oh yeah, there
You
it is.
had okay.
Leonard gets an extreme success.
And yes, I trained on the boat, but not this. Yeah, that's not going to go well.
Valentina's going to spend 7, 8, 9 points of luck to make that a hard success.
Oh, okay.
Just ballroom dance to stay warm, Stan.
I knew I shouldn't have learned that.
So we find Leonard has managed to have his tent positioned just right in behind the ice wall. It's a mere 40 mile an hour blowing down the line of it is no. Um, it's just how it was supposed to be. Valentina.
Teaches you a lot of things.
Valentina, the earlier on the night, on her way back to her tent, does notice that one of the guide ropes or guidelines is hanging a little bit slack as a tent peg has worked its way loose from the ice, but she manages to find a hammer and re-secures it before heading off to sleep and is undisturbed for the remainder of the night. Stan is not quite so lucky, and at about 5 p.m. in one of the bigger gusts, ends up having his tent actually collapse down on top of him and having to disentangle himself and get out and reset the tent, all in the middle of a howling Arctic gale or Antarctic gale, even. Big Sue's is overall okay, but she has an uneasy night and decides to bundle up and go out and see to her dogs. And that's where the problem lies, in that one of the supply tents has come loose and has basically blown into the kennel area and has gotten tangled in amongst the dog huts, and so she loses an hour and a half or so overnight dealing with that and clearing that up. But no actual physical harm comes to anybody or anything, just lost sleep. Um, so from about 5 a.m. onwards on the 3rd, the remainder of the camp is also roused and is having to walk around and resecure everything, making sure that all sorts of things are tied down. Um, the net result of which is that the Weddell doesn't get to take off until about 10 a.m., so quite a bit later than they were hoping for. Um, the Come the morning, well, I say come the morning, of course, it's light 24/7, but when, according to the ship chronometer, morning has come, we find all three of the expeditions um, making quiet preparations for their individual forays up into the mountains. Uh, your group is gathered by Professor Moore in the supply tent, having helped secure the camp. And together with Peter Sykes, you start to provision for the trip. Meanwhile, Williams and Marklin are working with Bauman and Beneke over at the Lexington camp to prepare the bell. They're having to flush Starkweather's um, poisoned oxygen out of their tank systems, installing the German oxygen tanks. Now, of course, that means that the fittings don't match, so they're having to adapt. Um,
Can we make sure to check our oxygen before we go up? Is that something that we know has been done on ours?
so Northrop, Enderby, absolutely. Uh, so you have about 20 oxygen tanks um, to check through, and you find that, frankly, most of them have a chemical aroma to them, sort of like breathing gasoline fumes. Now, it's not completely debilitating, but it's still probably headache inducing.
One
If
other
need be, I can use the smelly tank.
during the night, do you think I could would it be possible to fashion that stone I found into some sort of necklace or amulet to wear around my neck underneath my outfit?
Sure, sure. It's quite. I mean, being soapstone, it's relatively soft. You've got plenty of geological chisels and so forth in the various supplies. So yeah, you could make a rough hole in the middle of it and tie a string through it.
Well, that or if it's 5 points, I didn't know about wrapping it around each of those, maybe,
Oh,
and
okay.
fashioning some sort of lasso would work.
Yeah, I would say go ahead if you happen to have an art craft that fits, or just go ahead and roll a dex roll.
I'll just roll dex then. I don't have that, so
You didn't pick up origami on the ship?
I got a regular success. So
Okay, yeah, yep. No, it's you managed to work out how to uh, run a thin rope around the stone so that it doesn't slip off, and sort of tie a necklace or a
I'm
strap for it.
also bringing extra film because if they're gonna see supposedly some ancient city, I will need plenty of film. And if the Germans are going, I'm definitely packing heat on this trip. So I'm counting some bullets out.
With the air tanks, is there anything that can be done with them? Like, we don't have any way to refill them, do we? Or
No, that's really the problem. Now, you reckon that once you start getting much above 18,000 feet or so, and well, from the measurements you've been able to do with the theodolites and so forth, it looks like the base of the the most convenient valley leading into the mountains is probably at about 24,000 feet. So you're going to have to spend some time. Well, frankly, once you get up there, you're going to have to be on oxygen the whole time. What you have, um, what you brought along, and what you um, are sort of are planning to use is you've got enough oxygen canisters between you for about 4 days plus journey time. Overnight, you have um, sodium hydroxide. You have tents that have been set up to essentially act as oxygen tents. So that with the help of um, chemical salts that you bring along, you'll essentially be able to chemically generate oxygen in the tents overnight, so you don't need to use the actual oxygen cylinders whilst you're sleeping.
You said that's what is that item that's doing that?
That
Sodium what?
hang on, okay, I need to scroll back here a little bit. Actually, get it correct. Okay. So we have the oxygen tanks. And we have... So yes, sodium hydroxide canisters for the oxygen snow tents.
All right.
So yes, you've basically got two airproof tents, and then you can chemically create oxygen um, by exposing the sodium hydroxide, which should be enough to last you um, 4 days. Um, so later on, um, round about lunchtime, Professor Moore yet again radios Starkweather, letting him know that um, who's waiting to be picked up on the polar ice, um, letting him know that Lexington is basically sitting at the end of the runway ready to take off, but is waiting on the fog to clear at down at the Ross Sea, so that the Germans can deliver the promised radios to her base camp. He's not gonna take off until they deliver their part of the bargain. The issue is that the Ross camp is covered in thick fog at the moment, so everybody's basically waiting for the weather. And it's not difficult to hear Starkweather's rather exasperated reply from anywhere around the radio hut of, "After all we've done for her, the ungrateful hussy. Never could trust her, Doctor. We all know it was her that put that fellow Henning up to his tricks. Thinks she can get ahead of Starkweather, does she? Prepare the planes. We'll get there first, by God. And tell the men to have nothing to do with her people. We'll see if they can make do with the hunt." Maya had better watch his back. More sort of clearly, subduedly, but still acquiesces or agrees. Um, and during lunch, Moore then calls everybody together, announces the trip, introduces the, as he calls it, Team Alpha. So the five of you, or the four of you and the others who are coming along, there's 6 spaces, so there's two others to come along in the team. It says, Captain Starkweather thinks, and I concur, that we should best make our plans without the help of Miss Lexington's group. After all, it's still not been determined what happened to her radios and oxygen supply on the ice shelf, or indeed who, if anybody, is responsible. After which it's time for both Acacia and Moore to make their lunchtime broadcasts to their respective ships down on the Ross Ice Shelf. Lexington announces her intention to take off and go and explore what lies behind the dark majesty of the Miskatonic Range at first opportunity. Moore also announces your planned counter expedition, as it were. After which you all get together and start preparing the two, the Weddell and the Enderby, for the journey ahead. You'll the Enderby, of course, is still airborne, picking up Starkweather, but you start off with the Enderby or the Weddell rather, and you're basically packing it to its very limits. But rather have supplies than find yourselves up on the upper shelves without something that you then turn out to need. Um, so it's about 5 p.m. by the time that the Weddell radios back and says that they've picked up Starkweather safe and sound, and they're coming back to the camp, and should arrive back just before 11 p.m. or so. Dinner is a rather tense affair. Everybody is just tense, waiting for the next step in the adventure. You face a number of um, salutes, a number of cheers. Moore suggests that if you want, suggest that have your final smokes. Given that you're going to be spending your time in oxygen 100%, you won't be able to once you get going on the trip. And it's a poor night's sleep for everybody, tossing and turning with odd visions of snow-covered fields, deep rivers, and for some reason, large white examples of those tall, almost man-height birds that you encountered down on the Ross Ice Pack. It's a little bit colder on the morning of the 4th. So 10 -10 as opposed to -5. There's about 30% sky cover of very high cirrus. Um, the coast is still fogged in, but according to the radio reports, the wind is picking up, so there's hope. Um, Shortly before midnight, the Weddell comes in and unloads 3 men and the full sled team, more rushing out to greet Starkweather. Um, he turns around and orders the Weddell to be completely unloaded, uh, and wakes just about everybody up for a conference in 15 minutes. I don't know who amongst you would likely have stayed up to await Starkweather's arrival, as opposed to trying to get some sleep for the excitement of the day to follow.
I'm sleeping. I had a rough time last night. I need to hunker down, get ready for this trip.
Same as
Valentina's
Stan.
a Valentina's a light sleeper, so she probably would be awake and still be pretty much dressed for the weather, so she'd probably go out.
If I've learned anything from knowing various people who have served, is you learn how to sleep anytime, anywhere, because you don't know when you're going to get a chance, and you know you're going to be woken up randomly. So, uh, he's also used to getting up early, so he'll probably have slept pretty reasonably. He's used to sleeping in bad conditions, and yeah, it's colder, but he's got a nicely set up tent, and is probably up early out of muscle memory, if anything.
And Suze?
Oh, yeah, I'd be like Stan. I would definitely have gotten sleep. Now, if they come and wake me to come for the meeting, I'm going to go to the meeting. But yes, I would have definitely slept.
Okay, so some of you at least are shaking up or just wake up to Starkweather's loud meeting in 15 minutes. That's now. Uh,
Oh, that is just old hat. That's like, oh, there's like the autopilot kicks in for Warwick.
um, and Starkweather goes out and stands on the wing of the Weddell as people are gathering around him, hands in pockets. Um, Sorry about the beastly hour, lads, but it's time for the big push. Lexington and the Huns have sprung one on us and joined up to beat me over the pass. There's no end of trouble. I'm sure all of you realize what we have to do, and we will do everything a man can do. Our pilots tell me we can make it over the far side and spend a couple of days prowling around on the ground. Of course, only 6 of you beside myself, Professor, and the pilots can come on the first trip, but I know you're all very keen for this job, so put your names in with the Professor. If we can, we'll send back a plane to bring some more of you along. With a bit of luck, we can make sure those boys and their little lady are watching our tail from their windscreen, eh? Ah, so much for their efficiency. Oh, and let's jolly well make sure they don't pinch our stuff. I wouldn't put it past them. If they ask our help, tell them to go to blazes. They proved what sorts they are. You scientist fellows should put together a small kit for the trip. It's gonna be a bit tight. It'll be a grand adventure once we're there, and that's why we've all come, eh? I'm asking the doctor to pass around a tot, and then the mechanics should get to work. The rest of you will need some sleep. I want to take off by 8 o'clock. I know you won't let the side down, gentlemen. Dismiss.
Warwick is trying not to roll his eyes at this guy. He's doing just poker face. Like, because he's like, Warwick is just full of it, or not Warwick. Starkweather has no idea how to be a leader or how to deal with survival situations. Yep, sure, whatever you say, sir.
Yep. Wait for the mouth to stop moving and then go on and do what actually needs doing.
Well, with us leaving soon, and unfortunately my dog's not coming, I'll go give them all a good cuddle and say goodbye for the day.
Perfect. And it's a short and uneasy night. To the 5th. But at 4:15 in the morning, word arrives from the barrier camp that the fog has begun to blow off. So, Herr Professor U, Dr. Professor U, is sending at once to the plane that's waiting at the South Polar Cache to get it airborne with Lexington supplies. That gets down to the Ross Sea by about 9 a.m. or so. But before then, at about 7 or so, Starkweather emerges from his tent and his voice is heard volubly throughout the camp. Um, by an hour later, uh, the rest of the group confirms what Valentina already knows, or what you already realized, which is that some of the tanks of oxygen in the tanks of the Weddell smells pungently of glycerine. Um, in fact, most of them. Uh, whilst Halpern and Dewitt, the two pilots, are busy going through yet again the tanks, word comes at about 9:20 that the third German trimotor has landed at the Ross Sea camp and offloaded Lexington's promised equipment. And it's but minutes later that you see her and Kyle Williams, her pilot, start heating up the Bell's engines to prepare for flight. Of course, Starkweather doesn't take this standing up or lying down. He's standing there clenching and unclenching his fists, clearly watching in frustration as oxygen cylinders are tested one by one. And when the stuttering roar is heard from the engines of Lexington's Delta, he just shouts, "All right, lads, never mind. I'm sure it doesn't matter. Nasty Odin never killed a man. Just get these planes loaded. She hasn't beaten us yet." And a proper bucket brigade is started loading the 20 canisters of oxygen into the two planes as the silver monoplane, the Bell, slowly and then with increasing speed slides down the ice and takes off at about 10 a.m. Starkweather isn't even waiting for all the cylinders to get reloaded by the time that he orders the engines to be preheated. So it takes about another 20 minutes before Leonard and Halperin have finished preheating the engines with your blowtorches. And you end up boarding the planes in your heaviest clothing. They Pilots start the engines, and shortly afterwards you take off at about 10:20, and you see the mountains loom huge in the windows as you start climbing upwards. It's difficult to speak over the roar of the engines as they ramble on at high power, throttles to the firewall, desperately climbing up into the ever thinning air. As you lean against the windows and look towards the approaching mountains of madness. And if we look at... Where are we? If you look in the campaign notes, you can find a Boeing's Against the Peaks. But
It's trying to load. It's thinking about.
2 Boeings.
yep, the Enderby and the Weddell.
I'm in the safer one.
Duly noted. So for about the first hour, you find yourselves climbing steadily towards the pass, gradually gaining altitude that you need to reach the gap. The planes pitching at an ever steeper angle as you wallow in thin air. At first, Professor Moore is excited and tries to speak to the others of you, but it's just about impossible to hear yourself even think against the roar of the engines. Starkweather, meanwhile, in the other plane, is busy craning out of the window and taking his binoculars, looking out as the pilots murmuring to each other and across the radio to their companions in their padded headphones, but none of the rest of you can hear a word that they say. At some point, Halperin tries calling the bell, but just gets static for response. Then, as you start to pass up towards about 16,000 feet or so, you hear the engines start to roar and race as the planes buck and toss, and you get caught up in this powerful wind that carries you ever faster towards the mountain massif. You see just the horizon go above you as your vision just fills with the dark mountainsides ahead approaching at impossible speeds, as you buck in the turbulence. And I would like you all to make dex rolls.
You got to give me good ones.
Dex, not like strength or con?
Nope, dex.
Leonard does not.
Oh, no good at Dex. Oh, for mine. Does a hard success matter?
No.
Okay.
So, in the midst of all this bucking and broncoing, Leonard is almost thrown out of his seat and is only restrained at the last minute by the creaking of his safety belt, holding him in place with some mild bruising, but nothing too horrendous. And as you see the mountains charging nearer, each minute looming larger and darker, it's impossible that they can continue to grow like they do, but they do. You hear the engines almost, the roar of the engines almost disappear into a background static, as it's almost like time itself starts to slow down. And you get the sense of, at first there's the incredible noise of the rushing of the radial engines of the planes roaring from side to side to side. It builds over in just dissipates into just loud static crackle as everything just seems to go black and white, and then the blue color slowly returns as the wall of noise of the engines hit you. And it's about then the pilots will turn around and indicate that you need to put on your oxygen masks. Which then means that I'm going to have to ask everybody to make a con roll with a bonus die.
Silly question. I make a con roll with a bonus die anyway. Do I get 2 bonus die?
Oh, you will get 2 bonus dice for this one then, yes.
Amazing.
Well, it's good to have a bonus die because that was a 90 something. So let me just re-roll the 10s because when I checked bonus die, it didn't roll it.
You got to click on the regular.
Yeah.
Valentina taught me that last time.
Okay.
You said it's a con?
Yes.
I'm going to spend 6 luck to succeed.
Okay. So you choke a little bit on the acetone fumes in your particular oxygen tank, but you manage to breathe through it, and as you're being bounced around, you you manage to breathe through it. Meanwhile, as you look outside, your eyes drawn helplessly towards the impossible spires of the mountains, mercilessly illuminated by low rays of sunlight slanting from the east. As your planes strain and wallow in this rarefied air, but the peaks continue upward, high above the tiny crafts, the peaks seeming to just hold up the sky, and the heavens glimpse through those high peaks. They're a curious color, mottled white and pink, tinged with darker bands and areas of brightness that seem to move. The mountains are dark stone, bands of blacks and greys, interspersed with lighter striations, uneven and riddled in the upper reaches, with the blocks, angled terraces, and clusters of cave mouths that the text from Diet speaks of. There's no snow at all near the pass of the high spires. As you come up towards the pass, the ancient surfaces of natural mountainside give way to more artificial forms. Round-edged, weathered clusters of stony cubes, eerily regular in size and shape, are everywhere, their glistening quartzite pale and luminous against the mountain's darker stone. Spires, cones, cylinders, ramps, ramparts, and cave mouths of great regularity and antiquity appear. First, just little more than scattered shapes, like discarded blocks of a cyclopean child, then more and more common as you rise further. Um, those of you that have geology can give that a go.
Not this one.
Man, I didn't take anything good.
I don't think I have any science, but let me make sure. Oh, I have meteorology, so that's not going to help here.
I should have taken geology. It would have made sense, for a guy who worked in the oil fields.
I'll give you a hard education roll.
Sure, why not? Stan, isn't that a fumble?
Can you fumble your education?
Um, in this case, I'm going to let it slide. Um,
Throwing me under the bus, Big Suze. I'll remember this.
You do, Stan. There's no chance I'm going to throw you out of a plane.
Oh, not if I throw you first.
Oh, I'd like to see you try.
so you come up just over 22,000 feet, and it hardly seemed, even though you've been rushing towards these pillars holding up the heavens of mountains that reach further on up to 30, 40,000 feet probably. Um, at first it hardly seems like you're moving as you come up against the ground, and then all of a sudden the view shifts in just the blink of an eyelid as the ground comes up to meet you, and yet you're somehow miraculously just high enough to actually still be flying over the ground as opposed to pancaking into it. And you're coming along at an incredible speed, probably flying 2 or 3 times faster over the ground than your planes normally do through the air. So you're probably doing 300 miles an hour. So things are just flashing by in the blink of an eye. But you do catch these caves that are very regular, no stalactites or stalagmites, just blowing past. And I would ask you all to make a spot hidden roll. And as ever, it's Valentino, quite possibly through the lens of a camera, that happens to spot that around the edges of some of the closer cave mouths that you sort of can see a bit clearer as they fly by, you can see fine weathered cracks and pits that bring to mind the dot patterns on those weathered five-armed soapstones. As if the patterns that are on the stones were on the edges of those caves, but has been worn away by millennia of time.
You're muted, Valentina.
I don't know. Was that the city back there? That the stones looked similar to them rocks we found.
You mean the penguin eggs?
Well, we discovered those were rocks while you were sleeping the other day.
Big
Just
Sue's
fancy rocks.
hibernate times. We sure she's not a bear?
I'm no geologist, but the stone looks similar to what we found.
Interesting.
And as you stare at this utter majesty, you can't help but bring to mind the paintings of Herr Rorisch back in New York. And whilst you're fairly certain that he's never been here, it's as if the painting that was on the easel is a perfect representation of the dark, brooding majesty of these peaks. And I would also like everybody, well, who has at this point, does anybody at this point not have any Cthulhu mythos?
I just
Yeah.
got 1 point off the book.
Yeah, I think we just have that one
Apparently,
point.
just Stan.
No,
Okay.
I did not read the book. I am a noob. I think y'all are crazy.
Yeah, I think Warwick was the same. Like he was like, what the heck is going on? So, I don't believe he has that. Like he heard you all talking, he kind of like looked like I think there was the like there might have been like the okay, you're showing me words, this is just weird.
Yeah, third hand doesn't give you mythos. Only second hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Susan Valentina, of course, you're looking at these mountains and you can't help but think of other mountain ranges. The whispered tales of the elder gods of the feared and ancient plateau of Leng, of awful Kadash. And you bring to mind what Dyer wrote as he was reminded of the demoniac plateau of Leng, of Migo, of abominable snowman of the Himalayas, of the Pneumatic manuscripts with their pre-human implications, of the Cthulhu cult, of the Necronomicon, of the Hyperborean legends of formless Thugga, and worse than formless starspawn associated with it. As you fly at speed, keeping above a smooth glacier path beneath you, hurtling upward into the narrow pass, Indians roaring in the thin cold air, as the bottom of the pass is now visible before you, a stark expanse of wind-scoured grey stone guarded on either side by fantastic ribs and pillars of rock, and by the ever-present caves and their companion clusters. The rock face now utterly bare, stripped clean of all trace and snow and ice by that ever-present wind. Ahead, and on all sides, the jagged peaks claw knife-like at the sky of swirling opalescence. Thin clouds of ice crystals carried up from the lowlands paint chimeric and shadows across the heavens. The nearby spires seem wrapped in faint veils of color, shifting rainbows that flicker and evanesce, as if the light itself lay wound in heavy coils around them. And at this point, I would ask everybody to make a listen sound.
Listen, check.
Listen check, even, yes.
Leonard can't hear anything over the roar of the engines.
Same for Valentina.
Does an extreme matter?
No. But
Okay, I have a hard success.
I do love this for Suze. So, Suze, I would ask you to make a hard power roll.
Hell yeah!
Okay, then.
That's a fumble.
Yep.
I just rolled a straight 100. Hit me with your best shot.
So, alone out of the four of you, it's Suze who, as you start to climb up towards the back end of the pass, hears something else over the roar of the engines. It's a new sound, a high piping whistling, barely audible over the engine's roar, but it seems to invade every corner of the plane, sliding along nerves, lodging deep within your bones. You can almost make out the thread of a tune, but then it spirals away, twisting into something inhuman and beyond understanding. It's everywhere and at the same time nowhere. Um, and it somehow just fills you with a calm sense of peace, as though it's welcoming you. Um, and as you come through the pass, those of you who have it can roll navigation.
I think I learned that on the boat.
Leonard got a hard success on navigation.
I feel like Stan's just floundering
Sue's got
here.
a
I'm
hard
like out of
success.
my element or something. I don't know. Nothing's going right.
So, Leonard and Suze, you're looking down at the impossibly fast moving glacier, smooth ice flow underneath the plane. And you're struck by the thought that if you're going 3 times faster than how you're across the ground, then the plane is traveling through the air at maximum engine RPM. That doesn't bode well for the likelihood of being able to come back the other way.
This, and if I'm double checking, basically the wind is pushing us faster. It's in our favor currently.
Yes.
Um, he's going to occur. This is going to occur to him, and it's not like there's only so much map examination you can do, but he wants to try to, if he's able to, he wants to start trying to look at maps. And well, of course, a lot of this hasn't been mapped yet, so he really can't. So he's going to sort of try to basically, I mean, it's basic cartography notes he's doing at this point, which he's not specialized in, so it's not going to be great, but, basic orientation is a thing. Trying to sort of figure out, okay, so maybe this, if the wind's against us, this is not going to work the same way, but there's got to be a way down. So he's going to start trying to like quietly think about and plan for what are we going to do? We're kind of already pretty far in. He wants to have something productive before he brings it up, especially because, well, what are they going to do right now? So he's going through the notes and the and what little mapping there is and what little theory we have about the area. So you'll probably see him like looking through sheafs of paper and a notebook and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Anyone looking up knows he's got like a little bit of he's got that like frown of concentration going on, but he's very absorbed in what he's the notes he's taking and where he's kind of shuffling through the papers. Because, like, it's not like there's no way to come back down this way. It's just not going to be as good, and it's going to take longer and more resources, and oh no.
Exactly. Uh, where did I go to? I have managed. Oh, okay. No? Okay. So yes, clearing the summit finally. The two aircraft burst through the swirling cloud patterns at exactly 11:23 a.m. You start to angle down towards the plateau that opens up beyond. There's a shimmering haze of ice particles that lies on the horizon directly ahead. Thin layers of ice smoke blur the fine details of the land below. Directly beneath you, long talons of shadow reach over to the west, wrapping the foothills in darkness. Your own shadows can be seen, dark tunnels through the intangible mists, like windows into a dream. And behind you, in the sky above the highest peaks, portions of the solar halos can still be seen, like luminous rainbows of purest white in the sky, as they fade slowly behind you as you descend. There is a fine whisper of something that passes through the crafts, tickling the hairs on your necks and reminding Suze briefly of that wailing, piping song. The wash of ruddy sunlight dims and thickens, layer upon layer, like slow and subtle sap settling around you. For a moment, the engines throb and strain, and the aircraft shudder as if from turbulence, but then the air before you seems still. Then, seconds later, all is back to normal. The haze below is gone, and you can see the true nature of the plateau. Before you, miles away yet seeming almost close enough to touch, an immense, ice-shrouded city spreads out before you. Incredibly massive, impossibly ancient, undeniably real. Its crumbled towers, labyrinthine streets extend as far as the eye can see. If you go to your campaign notes, there's a city from the air graphic to give you a little bit of a feel for it.
So we're actually seeing that.
Yes.
I think that deserves a picture for sure.
Absolutely. I'd say go ahead and make an art photography roll just for fits and giggles.
I'm in shock. I failed that one.
Yeah, the
Push it.
something about the plane still making it bounce around a bit too much, probably.
Stan's a little stunned by this. I'm like, I thought we were here to like dig things up out of the ice. That doesn't need digging. Is this an archaeology thing we're doing? What's going on?
Well, to that
Stodgy
point,
would love this.
you see that maze of squared, curved, and angled blocks, tumbled ramparts, immense expanses of rubble embedded in glacial ice. The frozen sheet does appear to be probably no more than maybe 40 or 50 feet deep. And here and there, there's vast dark shapes beneath the surface. And everybody gets to make a sanity roll.
Well, that would explain my confusion.
So I actually stuck the plateau image into the notes for that we're taking for the session as well, so we'll have that.
Wonderful.
Ah, yeah. Stan finally comes through with a roll.
I have never been more okay with something. Stan only has 30 sand to start with?
Yeah, it didn't go well. I have to make him mentally fragile because of that. That's why he's a tough guy, to make up
Oh,
for other things.
Stanny boy, you might only be with us for so long.
Leonard is going, yep, that's some wind-swept snow. Those are some ruins.
Yeah.
What do you mean there's not
I-
ruins up here? Glaciers do weird things.
It's Egypt
Yeah,
or
sure, why
something,
not?
right? So Valentina failed. What does she get?
So this is probably the reason why she doesn't get a particularly good photograph of it from up here, because she does take a single point of sanity loss from the sheer impossibility and ancient majesty of what she's seeing, especially having read the book as she realizes that if the city is here like Dyer wrote of, then probably so is everything else that Dyer wrote of.
For this point of sandy loss, I'm going to use my pulp talent and just use a point of luck instead.
Okay. As she shakes herself back into professional mode and starts taking pictures. Meanwhile, Professor Moore has gone completely still and quiet, and then slowly takes off his glasses, and turns away to rub his eyes. Whereas Starkweather lets out a triumphant shout of, "Look at the size of it! No wonder the Germans were in such a hurry." As the two planes bank slightly to the right, descending further, angling northward over the terraced expanse of foothills. And as you drop below the level of the pass, the winds blowing you from the pole subside, lessening to almost nothing. You pass through white wisps of cirrostratus clouds that don't blur the outline of the sun, but the tiny suspended crystals of ice occasionally catch the red Antarctic daylight and cast it in breathtaking arcs and halos across the heavens. There's a thin fog that hugs the lower slopes of the back range. Bits of it constantly snatch up and torn in long streaming fingers towards the city. For about half an hour, you swoop in broad, curving arcs, 30 miles out over the ruins and back again, covering a section of the city about 10 miles wide. You gaze in awe, possibly fear, upon these mighty works. Professor Moore has his eyes glued on the external landscape, frantically sketching and scribbling in a small notebook. James Starkweather, meanwhile, screaming, "Get some film!" And over there! No, that one! As he points out one stupendous ruin after another. As you descend down to less than 1,000 feet above the ice, the ancient and deserted nature of the city is repeatedly and repeatedly made plain. Ice spills from the stumps of shattered towers. Great cracks and voids ruin plazas, streets, and walls. The only colors visible are those of ice and rocks. And after a long, wordless survey of the ruins, at the end you find a cleft running down through the city, some ancient river ending at an ice waterfall going down over the edge, guarded by the remains of two ancient statues. Where Professor Moore coughs and taps Halperin on the back. "Let's land!" he shouts, flipping back a few pages in his notebook. "Over there!" He's pointing to a broad open area about 2 miles away. "Land there, if you can." And with a wave of its wings, the Waddell banks away from the Enderby and arcs towards the chosen site. Halperin flying low above it, turning to get a good look at the ground below before climbing away and returning on the landing run. The heavy Boeing handles sluggishly, unresponsive in the thin air. The landing is rough and terrifying. The Waddell dropping steeply over harsh, jutting stone towards rubble-strewn ice that rushes up far too quickly. You can see treacherous bits of rocks and cracks marring the surface that seemed smooth from above. Then, with a huge the plane smashes into the earth, bouncing once, then scraping across the uneven ice in a screech of stressed metal. 200 yards further on, the right ski catches on an embedded stone, causing you to yaw viciously to a side. Everything just gets thrown around as you come to squealing to a stop after about another 100 yards or so. The Enderby, following behind about a minute later, lands without a mishap. So for once, Starkweather's luck holds. And the Enderby slides to a halt not too far away from where you are in the Weddell. You spend 10 minutes or so checking your bruises, getting into survival gear, and also getting on the heavy pack frames with your oxygen cylinders. And carefully go down onto the smooth ice. You are abroad in the city of the Elder Things, and it is exactly noon. And that's where we'll call a halt for tonight.